So now we will be reviewing the module 7 of SRWE course. So we're done with the the 6. Now our topic is DHCPv4. Okay, so Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP, dynamically assigns IP address to devices. So that's DHCP all about. Okay, DHCPv4, so it's for IP address version 4. Okay, so the module title is DHCPv4, and then our objective is implement DHCPv4 to operate across multiple LANs. So here are 3 topics. First, the DHCPv4 concepts. So we need to explain how DHCPv4 operates in a small to medium-sized business network. Then configure a Cisco IOS DHCPv4 server. So we will configure a router as a DHCPv4 server, and then also configure the router as a DHCPv4 client. Okay. First topic, DHCPv4 concepts. So we have here, so DHCPv4, or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol v4, assigns IPv4 addresses and other network configuration informations dynamically. So dynamically means automatically. Okay. Okay, so DHCPv4 is an extremely useful and time-saving tool for network administrators. Okay, so a dedicated DHCPv4 server is a scalable and relatively easy to manage. So, however, in a small branch or sole location, so a Cisco router can be configured to provide DHCPv4 services without the need for a dedicated server. So, Cisco iOS software supports an optional full-featured DHCPv4 server. So we can configure router so as a server in a small branch network. Okay, so I think this is the process. So DHCPv4 list process begins with the client sending a message requesting the service of DHCP server. It requests an address. Then if there is DHCPv4 server that receives a message, it will respond with an IPv4 address and possible other network configuration information. So DHCPv4 server, so it can be a router for small networks. We have here the steps to obtain a list. So when the client boots or otherwise wants to join a network, so it begins a 4-step process to obtain a list. So the first one is DHCP discover, second one is DHCP offer, then DHCP request, and DHCP acknowledgement. So the first one is DHCP discover. So the client starts the process using broadcast message with its own MAC address to discover available DHCP servers. So as you can see here, we have a client here requesting for an address. So it is a broadcast address. So it finds a DHCP server. So DHCP server, so it receives the request or the broadcast address of the client, and now it DHCP sends the binding DHCP offer message to the requesting client. So let's see when that receives it. It reserves an available IPv4 address to list to the client. Okay. Then the server also creates an ARP entry consisting of the MAC address of the requesting client and list of IPv4 address. So it's just reserving and offering IPv4 client. So it sends also a offer message. Okay, next is DHCP request. So I think this is the reply for the DHCP offer. So the first, okay. So when the client receives the DHCP offer from the server, so it sends back a DHCP request. Okay. So it serves as a binding acceptance notice to the selected server for the parameters it has offered. Okay. So for the acknowledgement is, so receiving the request from the client, so the server may verify the list information with an ICMP ping to that address to ensure that it is not being used already. Okay. DHCP ACK, DHCP acknowledgement, DHCP PAC, DHCP PAC. Okay. So based on the photo here or example diagram, so the first one is the DHCP discover. So it is a broadcast address. Then the client says, I would like to request an address. So it finds a DHCPv4 server. So it's a broadcast address. Now, upon receiving the message, so the server issues a DHCP offer. So it is a unicast address. So meaning it is a message specifically for the client. So for example, there is a reply here, I am a DHCPv4 server. So here is an address offer. So upon receiving this message, and the client issues a broadcast message. So I accept the IPv4 address offer. So I think it then upon receiving the request, then the server issues a DHCP PAC. So ito yung unicast message. Then your acceptance is acknowledged. Okay. So steps to renew a lease. So first one is DHCP request. Step 2 is DHCP acknowledgement. So process to renew the lease with the DHCP server. I would like to renew my lease. So before the lease expires or the IPv4 expires, the client sends a request message directed to the server that originally offered the IPv4 address. So if a DHCP pack is not received within a specified amount of time, the client broadcasts another DHCP request so that one of the other servers can extend the lease. Okay, so there's a time limit for DHCP address. DHCP acknowledgement. So on receiving the request, the server verifies this information by returning DHCP ACK. Okay. Check your understanding. Which message sent by DHCPv4 client to initiate the lease obtaining process to discover initiation. So which two DHCPv4 messages are sent by the server and the lease obtaining process sent by the server. So it's offer and acknowledgement. So which these DHCPv4 messages are used in the lease renewal process. So your DHCP ACK and request. So requesting for another IP address before the lease expires, and then also the acknowledgement. Okay. Now for the configuration of our router as a DHCPv4 server. Okay. So if you do not have a separate server, this topic will show you how to configure a router to act as one. Okay. So we're just configuring this router as a server for DHCP addresses. Okay, steps to configure a Cisco iOS DHCPv4 server. So with the step 1, we need to exclude IP addresses. Step step 2 is define DHCPv4 pool name, and then step 3 is configure the DHCPv4 pool. This is the syntax for excluding IPv4 address. So here IPDHCP excluded address, and then the low address to the high address. So high address is optional, so it is used when there is a range of addresses. Step 2 is the pool name. So here is the syntax, the IPDHCP pool, then pool name, and then DHCP. Define the address pool. So address pool, so we need to type in our network and then the subnet mask. Okay, so it is the in here in this command, it is the range of addresses specifically for that network. And we also need to define the default gateway. So this is the command default router, and then the address of the interface of a router. Then we also need to define the DNS server, the address of the server, then the domain name. So here is the syntax. Then we can also define the duration of the DHCP list, but I think we don't have that configuration here as an example. Okay, then the net via screen server, so I think this is not that important. So here a configuration example, we will be configuring this router in this topology as a server. So first one is we need to exclude some addresses. So let's see why we need to exclude. Okay. So some IPv4 addresses in a pool are assigned to network devices that require static address assignments. So therefore, these IPv4 addresses should not be assigned to other devices. So the command syntax to exclude IPv4 addresses is the following. So for example, we have here the PC1. So we statically configured the IP address of this one. So therefore, we don't need the dynamic IP addressing for that because it already have an IP address. So we also need to type in our pool, then the network. So the network where we will be giving the IP addresses. Also the default router. So it is the interface of the router. Then the DNS server. Then the domain name. So there are some commands for verifying DHCPv4 configuration. We have here the show running config, show IP DHCP binding. So it displays a list of all IPv4 address to MAC addresses bindings provided by the DHCP. Also have the show IP DHCP server statistics. Okay. So just some example for configuration, verifying configuration. We have the show running config. So it just filters the running configuration for DHCP. The show IP DHCP binding. So it displays all IPv4 address to MAC address bindings. Show IP DHCP server statistics. I'll also say this count for DHCP discover request. So for verifying client receive IPv4 address, so I have here the DNS, the IPv4 from the DHCP, then default gateway and DNS servers. Okay. So now we will be doing this syntax checker, configure DHCPv4. Okay, in this syntax checker activity, we configure R1 to be a server for the 192.168.11.0/24 network. Okay, exclude the following address from 192.168.11.0/24. Okay. IP address excluded no, IP excluded address, then 192.168.11.1, then 192.168.11. If we need to IP DHCP excluded, and we also need to exclude the address for okay. Next is configure the DHCPv4 pool with the following requirements. So IP DHCP pool, LAN pool, to configure the network address. Our network is this one. So that 168.11.0.255.5. Okay, then configure the default gateway address. This is the default gateway address. We have the default router 192.168.11.1, then DNS server .6, then the domain name, we also need that. Example.com. Then just end it. We have successfully configured DHCP server and relay agent. What? So disable the Cisco iOS DHCP server. So we have here the no server DHCP. So DHCPv4 relay. Network clients are not typically on the same subnet as those servers. For example, here we have the PC1 here, and the server are on the different network. So in order to locate the servers and receive services, clients often use broadcast messages. So even if it's a broadcast address, it will not be forwarded to servers. So the router must be configured to relay DHCPv4 messages to the DHCPv4 server. Here are some commands. So the ipconfig/release, so it releases all current IPv4 address information. So as you can see, we have here no addresses for default gateway, then see. Then for renew, so command causes PC1 to broadcast DHCP's discover message. So the output shows that PC1 is unable to locate the server because routers do not forward broadcasts. Okay, it does not forward broadcasts. Wait. Okay, it does not forward broadcast. Broadcast domain. Okay. So this is the IP helper address. So it is a solution to configure R1. So it causes the router to relay DHCPv4 broadcast to the DHCP server. Okay, so it allows the broadcast messages for them to be sent for server. Okay. So the interface of the router, then IP helper address. So the address is, I think it is the server. Then show IP interface. We can see that the helper address is configured. Then IP config all, so we can see the acquired IPv4 address from the server, so the DHCP server. So every other service broadcast relayed. So DHCPv4 is not the only service that the router can be configured to relay. So by default, the IP helper address command forwards the following 8 UDP services. So here are some ports, and then the corresponding services. So time, PACAX, DNS. So we also have the packet tracer here for configure DHCPv4, so it will be included on different playlist. So I'm not yet doing this, so maybe next video. I think it is the last topic before the multi-practice and quiz. So configure a DHCP client. So what is this? So there are scenarios where you might have access to DHCP server through your ISP. So in these instances, you can configure iOS router as a DHCP client. So I think so the router is configured as a client, so it receives dynamic addresses from the ISP. Okay. So Cisco routers in Soho or small office or home office have to be configured as clients, so in similar manner to client computers. So this method depends on the internet service provider or ISP. Okay, so in its simplest configuration, the Ethernet interface is to connect to a cable or DSL modem. So to configure an Ethernet interface as a DHCP client, use the IP address DHCP on the interface of the router. So here the configuration, the interface the router, then IP address DHCP, then no shutdown. So it is now configured as a DHCPv4 client, the router. Then the show IP interface. From the interface of the router, we can see that the address of this router is determined by DHCP. So home router, Cisco router, okay. The home router is DHCPv4 client. So here the wireless router, so it is configured as DHCP. Also have the syntax checker. I think we have here just one or two commands. Center interface 30/0/1. So IP DHCP address, path, IP address DHCP. What did I? Okay, IP address DHCP. Then no shutdown, just need to activate that. Return. Then show interface G0/0/1 I. You can see the module practice and quiz. I also have the packet tracer. I think we have 3 or 2. We have 2 packet tracers. So what did I learn in this module? We have the DHCP concepts. So the server, say, dynamically assigns or leases or rents an IPv4 address to a client from a pool of addresses for a limited period of time chosen by the server. So we have here the 4 process in obtaining a lease. We have the DHCP discover, offer, request, and pack. So regarding to the lease expiration, we have the 2-step process to renew the IP address. So we are requesting again the IPv4 address. So we have the request and the acknowledgement. We also tackle about configuring a Cisco iOS DHCPv4 server. So we are configuring the router as a server. Then we also configure the router as a client. So the router interface also requests an IP address from the ISP or Internet Service Provider. So for the module quiz, we have 15 questions. So the DHCP enabled client has just booted. So during which 2 steps will the client PC use? Broadcast messages when communicating with the DHCP server. So DHCP discover is a broadcast address. The packs no offer request. So DHCP discover and request is a broadcast address messages from the client PC. Okay, so an administrator uses the command IP DHCP. So it is requesting. So configure the router to be. Okay, this is one. IP address DHCP. Okay. So when a client is requesting an initial address list from DHCP server, why is that DHCP request message sent as a broadcast? So the client may have received offers from multiple servers, and the broadcast serves to implicitly decline those other offers. So the client must request or just accept the address from a single server. So which DHCP IPv4 message contains the following information? Destination. So it's a broadcast address. It does not have the IPv4 of the client. I think it's a discover. Okay. So what kind of message sent by DHCPv4 client requesting an IP address? DHCP requesting DHCP. Okay. So as a DHCPv4 client list is about to expire, what is the message that the client sends to the DHCP? It's a request. So the destination IP address when an IPv4 host sends a discover message. So discover message is a broadcast message. So it has the 255. If more than one DHCP server is available on local network, in which order will DHCP messages be sent between a host and DHCP server? So we first have to discover, offer, and request connection. So what is the most likely scenario in which the WAN interface of the router would be configured as DHCP client to be assigned a dynamic IP address from the ISP? So it is a Soho or home brand router. So it's just a small network. So the router would be configured as a client. So which is this DHCP address allocation method that assigns IPv4 address for a limited lease period. Assigns for limited automatic or dynamic. So what is the reason why the DHCP request message is sent as the broadcast during the DHCPv4 process request? So to notify other DHCP servers on the subnet that the IP address was used. Okay. How is this DHCP discover transmitted on a network to reach the IP server? So it is a broadcast address is sent to the broadcast IP address as the IS. So which destination IPv4 address does DHCPv4 client use to send the initial DHCPv? When the client is looking for DHCPv. So it's also broadcast address. So under two circumstances with the routers usually configured as DHCP client, the routers then to be used as. So this is an ISP requirement. It's meant to be as Soho gateway. So which address does a DHCPv4 server target when sending offer message to client that makes an address request? Which address does client hardware address, the MAC address of client? Check. Okay, we all have a correct answers. So the next topic would be the SLAAC and DHCPv6. So it is dynamic IP addressing for IPv6. That's it.